You are listening to Dear Texas Radio, a program of Dear Texas Read and sponsored by Texas Authors Incorporated. If you would like to ask today's guest author a question, please do so on Twitter using the hashtag Dear Texas Radio. However, not all questions will be answered during the show. Now sit back and enjoy listening to today's show and learn about a Texas author and their books.
Hello, Dear Texas Radio. This is your host, Denise Bryson, and I have had the great pleasure to be interviewing today our guest, Michael J. Farlow, and he is the author of Future Discovered, Immortal Guardians, Search for Help, and in his nonfiction book, Leaders Are Made, Not Born. And good evening, Michael. How are you?
I'm doing fine, Denise. Thank you very much.
And one thing I want to say is thank you for your service. Michael was a U.S. Navy. He was in the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis. That's where he graduated from. And then he was a Navy combat pilot and served in senior positions. So tell us a little about yourself. I thought that was awesome. We're coming up on Veterans Day.
Yeah. As you mentioned, I went to the U.S. Naval Academy, which was an interesting adventure for 4 years. And then I was lucky enough to get selected for flight training. And I went to Pensacola and started the flight program. Initially, I was going to fly fixed-wing attack aircraft, one of them called a SPAD, an A-1. But before I could get there, they retired it. So I said, I'm getting bored with this straight and level flight. I was eating peanut butter crackers and slapping myself in the face to stay awake. And so I selected helicopters. And my first real assignment out of flight school was in Vietnam, where I flew helicopter gunships. I had 635 combat missions there, and then came back and flew with other kinds of squadrons for almost 13 years. Oh, wow. I got a couple of master's degrees, one of them in systems engineering while I was in the Navy. And my very first job when I got out of the Navy was an interesting company that dealt with low observable technology, which means making things invisible. And it was a lot of fun. And I look back on it and I said, that's a kind of an interesting beginning for somebody who's interested in science fiction.
Yes, it is.
I also had some. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, I was just going to say, with that being said, I was going to get into your books. I was going to start with your first series in the sci-fi, and that is Future Discovered. And when we first start talking about and we get introduced to Van Childs, and so we get introduced to him in that first book. And so could you tell us a little bit about that book? Yeah,
it's hard to know where to start exactly, except that I had an inkling of an idea about a science fiction series, and I'd never written science fiction or any fiction before. And I had an idea. I started writing, and I got about 30,000 words into it. And then I had the good fortune to go to a workshop sponsored by Bob Mayer, New York Times bestselling author, and his wife, Deb. And I there found out that I didn't know what I was doing. It wasn't terrible, but it needed a whole lot of work. And I got a little help from them. Actually, I got a lot of help from them. I went back home and threw away the 30,000 words, kept the concept, and then started working through it again at a different kind of pace with thinking differently. Subsequently, I had more help by Bob and Deb and some other people, too, along the way, because believe it or not, science fiction, or fiction in general, is much more difficult than nonfiction. Nonfiction is fairly straightforward. The outlines are easy. The research is relatively easy. It's time-consuming, but fiction, much different. And so I had a lot of adjustments to make but I had a lot of help in doing it.
Oh, that is good. Now, what about who are the Archon? I guess that's what my next question is how did you come up with those aliens, those people that would be invading Earth?
Well, the premise of the book is that the hero or the main character, Van Childs, stumbles onto some alien technology and is requested, so to speak, by the caretaker of that information as an AI to take on the burden of preparing mankind for some bad people. And those bad people turned out to be the Archon. Archon are an empire that grows increasingly over time, doesn't have a whole lot of technical skills of their own, but they conquer people who have the things that they need, and they keep expanding, and eventually they're going to get to Earth. So the technology that was left behind on Earth, and which Van Childs found, was left there to prepare mankind for this empire who was consuming everything in its path.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. Now, what about, so then we go from that book to Immortal Guardians, and so the series continues on from there. And so, what does a person starting to read the book? What would they have to look for as far as the next book that gets implemented in the series?
Well, the first book, Future Discovered, is kind of what it sounds like. Van Childs is all about figuring out what this whole thing is that he's run into. And oh, by the way, he doesn't want to do it. He wanted some peace and quiet in his life, and he stumbled onto this technology. He's not happy with it, but he agreed to do it for a year. And he learns about the technology. He tests it a little bit because it's one thing to know about it and so forth, but you've got to actually try to use it. Mm-hmm. And, of course, there's a bad guy lurking around in the background, makes things difficult for him. But the transition into Immortal Guardian, his year is up. And now he has to commit himself to taking this role of protecting mankind. And Immortal Guardian suggests that he's going to be immortal, and sort of. It's more like a life extension through nanotechnology. He agrees to it, and then is given more access to more technology, and finds out that, oh, by golly, there's another treasure trove on the moon. And he gets his first taste of space travel in that. Of course, there's a whole host of other problems that he faces, not the least of which is that other people catch on to sort of what's going on, and they want to go to the moon too. So there's a lot of disruption, along with another bad guy who is trying to stop the whole thing. So
yeah, is that the Carson group that wants to go to?
No, the Carson group.
They want to do space travel.
They turn out to be an ally. Dick Carson is a classmate of Van Childs and a longtime friend, and they link up and try to help one another, actually help Van succeed in his task. There's the bad guy. I can't give this away.
No, don't give it away. Don't give it away. And I'm not going to call any more names.
is somebody that they didn't expect, but who, once again, tries to throw wrenches into everything that Van and his team try to do. And it's interesting to see what happens and what the outcome of that is.
Yeah, it's exciting. And so then you have to go to, and then we have a new one. Your new book just came out, and it is The Search For, let me get my notes back and get all my stuff together here. I'm trying to do two things at once. The Search For Help. And so now they're trying to get some help.
Yeah, it's, imagine putting yourself in a position where you have to help mankind come to grips with this huge empire that is out there. And as a matter of fact, by the time this book came out, they've met twice in minor little skirmishes, and he suddenly comes to realize that he might not be able to do this with the assets that he has available in his own organization in even Earth. So that being the case, the math just wasn't going to allow it to happen. So he says, well, I'm going to have to find somebody to go to help us. And not knowing exactly where to go, he picked the best direction into space, into the next star system, and in the hopes of finding some help. And Search for Help is about that search, what he finds or doesn't find, and the problems associated with that. And is also the first of the three books that's dedicated to activity in space and someplace outside the solar system.
So now, with these, what prompted you to start writing this type of a genre? We have a minute left before we go to break, but and that might be something we want to talk about when we come back from break. This is exciting because I really want to know what's going on and what's going to happen here. So I got excited reading about the sci-fi, because you kind of grow up with that. When you have brothers in the house, you always have to end up watching sci-fi and westerns and things like that. So you get used to. I've gotten used to looking at those types of movies and things like that, and so I'm kind of excited about what's going to be going on next.
Do they read a lot of science fiction?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna recommend this series to them.
Yeah, well, we can go to the break here when you want, and we'll talk about it some more. But one of the things is I've been reading over the years a lot of science fiction, enough to where at some point I think I said to myself, I could do that.
Yeah,
well,
you're right there. It's hard.
Yeah, sort of.
Well, let us go to break, and we'll be back. We'll come right back, and we'll get right back on that topic. So we're going to take a short break and hear a word from our sponsors, and we'll be right back.
Okay.
The Enigma Dragon is a chilling duel between fortune and destruction that covers 4 continents, 12 cities, and several terrifying scenarios that will come true if the good guys can't defeat the bad guys. Award-winning authors Brakefield and Berkey take you on another techno-thriller ride of analog versus digital combat that spills across the dark net of today's world in Book 9 of their series. Enjoy this edge-of-your-seat, page-turning standalone tale from EnigmaSeries.com. Available now at Amazon.
Living under a theocracy is tough enough, but out of nowhere, a secret mission threatens everything in a common soldier's life. Now Salvik must do all he can to protect his people and the woman he loves. The Gray Blade by Aaron Ward is the first in the God Swords series, available at your favorite bookstore or at books.txauthors.com. Longtime developmental editor Susan Malone fosters writers' innate talents to help them become successfully published authors. Over 50 Malone-edited books have sold to traditional publishers. Her authors' books win major literary awards, reach the bestsellers list, and become films. She offers in-depth, personalized editing and coaching to turn your manuscript into a successful published book. To learn more about Susan Malone's services, please visit MaloneEditorial.com.
Love to read? Love to meet authors in person? Then check out BookFestival.network to find a book festival in your region of Texas. We are adding book festival events throughout the year, so sign up to get notices and even a coupon towards purchase of a Texas author's book. Sign up at bookfestival.network. Texas Authors is accepting entries into their 6th annual book contest. Go to books.txauthors.com and sign up. Contest is valid for Texas authors only and is open to anyone 18 years of age and older who published a book during the 2017 calendar year. Enter at books.txauthors.com today. Attention students in grades 6 through 12. Do you love to write? Texas Authors Institute of History is kicking off its first statewide short story contest for students. It's free to enter and a great way to begin your career in writing. Sign up at shortstory.texasauthors.institute for complete rules. Again, To enter, go to shortstory.texasauthors.institute. You can win cash prizes and an opportunity to be published. Hello, Texas authors. My name is Randy James, coming to you from my Carrollton recording studio, where I spend time writing and producing commercials for my radio endorsement clients, as well as my private freelance clients. I'd like the opportunity to help you sell more books with a commercial like this and get listeners of Dear Texas Radio excited about your title, all at a special introductory price, available to members of the Texas Association of Authors. Call or text 214-762-1942. That's 214-762-1942. You are listening to Dear Texas Radio, a program of Dear Texas Read and sponsored by Texas Authors Incorporated. If you would like to ask today's guest author a question, please do so on Twitter using the hashtag Dear Texas Radio. However, not all questions will be answered during the show. Now sit back and enjoy listening to today's show and learn about a Texas author and their books.
We are back with the author, Michael J. Farlow. So, Michael, you were telling us about your journey of writing of sci-fi books. So could you continue to tell us about that?
Yeah, sure. I think we ended by my saying that I had been reading a whole lot of science fiction. I mean, I started reading it, and then I started listening to a lot of audiobooks from Orson Scott Card and Jack Campbell, whose real name is John G. Henry, Raymond Weil, S.M. Sterling, Rick Brown, David Weber, Taylor Anderson, and a bunch of others. And so, as I said, somehow or another, I said, I think I could do that. I think I want to try that, not knowing how difficult it was actually going to be. So I jumped into it, and as I told you earlier, I got a little ways into it, like 30,000 words, only to discover it is much more difficult than I thought it was going to be. But as I said, I read a lot and was interested in it. And then what I realized is that my flight and combat experience, my experience in government, and then my industry experience in a variety of different kinds of engineering all kind of came together in making the writing of science fiction, I want to say a little bit easier, but they all had a positive effect on my being able to do it, because I could see the possibilities. I knew what was real today. I was fairly certain I could see into the future a little bit and speculate on what was going to be there. So all of those things, plus my enjoyment of science fiction in general, led me to embark on this particular path.
Yeah, because I could really see, I mean, just reading your bio and what you've done, I could see how that could all mesh together and how you can really have a vivid imagination or a good imagination on those types of things. Because, I mean, when you're a pilot and things like that, you're flying and, you know, just all of that soaring through the air, you know, all of that kind of stuff can cause you to, I could see how, and then just like you said, you know, your engineering positions that you held and things like that, I can see how that could take you on that journey into the science fiction.
Yeah, well, it certainly helps. Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm. That helps a lot. Now, you also wrote a leadership book. And so, you know, we hear this phrase, people are natural-born leaders. But you give a different statement with that. You said leaders are not born, but they're made.
Yes.
Can we talk about that?
Yeah. That title was not by accident.
I know.
When I was doing my PhD work, I got involved in understanding the brain a little bit more, and I followed a little bit the Human Genome Program, and I read a lot. And what I discovered is that the Human Genome Project finally mapped out the human genes and found that there were only about 25,000 of them. Prior to that, they speculated there might be as many as 80,000, but there are many fewer. And what the literature shows is that if you think about the standard things that we think about in terms of genetic things, like how you're male or female, or you're tall, you're short, maybe the color of your eyes, those kinds of things, are all encapsulated as part of one of those 25,000 things. But there's also the things that you don't think about, and that's, for example, your respiration. What keeps you breathing in and out all the time? There's a genetic composition to that. The human body is incredibly complex, and it requires a lot of those genes just to make it work. And as a result, there are no genes left over for anything else. And so there are no genes within the human body that you can say are leadership genes or any trait genes that you can think about. It's just not scientifically possible. So therefore, given that there are no genes like that, it's not possible for somebody to be a born leader. Leadership is something that people learn over time. It can go back as far as their childhood and how they were raised, the family environment they're in, what they did at school, and somewhere along the way, hopefully, some development, something in their corporate experience that shows them how to be better at leading people. So I wanted to emphasize that there's nobody that comes out being a leader out of the box. It's just not possible. That it's a lot of hard work, a lot of practice, and a lot of learning that's involved.
And I agree with that. I think that just looking back on my own life as a child and being thrust into leadership roles, I learned how to be a leader. I'm not sure if that was what I was to begin, like they say, a natural-born leader. But I think it's something that I've learned over the years and being put in different positions of leadership and had to learn how to lead.
Yeah, I run into a lot of people who do believe that leaders are born, and that's why I created the title that I did. And if you read this the workup section to the book, it explains why that's not so. And so I part of the reason for writing it that way was just to refute all those people out there that think that people are spring out of the box fully loaded, because if that were the case, there would be no leaders because there's no genetic basis for it, and we know we have lots of leaders. So somehow or another they got there by in some other way.
And so, from this book, you also birthed, or I don't know if it was from this book or you wrote the book after you did that, but you birthed a leadership training and coaching company as well. Yeah.
I've been interested in leadership for a long time, and as I've told some people, I had an outline that was fairly extensive for a long time, probably for 8 years. And it's one of those things where I'm going to sit down and write this thing, but then something happens and you don't do it. And then in the last company I was in, I saw really bright people failing because their leadership skills did not keep pace with their promotions. And I looked at them, I watched them carefully for a while, and I said, maybe there's something I could do to prevent that from happening. Maybe there's a way I can make a difference. And so I went back to school and went through the PhD program, partially in an attempt to make a difference. Got my PhD in organizational leadership. And when I was doing that, I was doing an awful lot of writing, so I picked up that outline again, and this time carried through with it. So it was a labor of love, but over a long period of time, which was encouraged by watching people fail when they shouldn't have.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. So, Michael, go ahead.
I was going to say, that's why I started the company. I waited till the PhD program was completed, and then I started Wolf Leadership Development as a way of helping people to be successful and not fail. And I do that through coaching. I'm a certified master coach, as well as a PhD in organizational leadership.
Wow, what an awesome career. I mean, just from one thing to jump out of the military and then went right into some, corporate positions. And then now, like you said, you're an author by night and you are a leadership coach by day. Now, let us say, because our time is starting to wind up here, and I want to make sure that everybody knows where to go and get your books at. And so I know they're found on TexasAuthors.com, but couldn't you tell us where and we encourage everybody to go there and get them. But we want for you to tell us how people can reach you on social media, how they can find you, and where other places your books are sold, and so that we can make sure we get all of that in.
All of the books can be found on my author page, which is www.michaeljfarlow.com.
Mm-hmm.
You can go to Amazon and just type in my name, Michael J. Farlow, and hit a button, and you'll see all of them there.
Yeah.
In both the Kindle format and the print format. I think those are probably the two easiest ways to actually locate the books and find out a little bit about them. I have on my for my business site, which is www.wolfleadership.com. There's a whole page devoted to Leaders Are Made, Not Born, and you can order there and find out a little bit more about the book.
Okay. And then you're also on Facebook. Are you on Twitter as well?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook, and I have a Twitter account. It's at Mike_Farlow67. I will tell you that I'm a neophyte when it comes to Twitter. I haven't jumped into that a whole lot yet, although I'm learning more about it. I have some folks that help me, and so I've got a lot of stuff out there right now. But I'm there if somebody wants to say something or ask me a question. I'm happy to answer it.
I know it's so much with all this social media stuff now. It's just so much going on and trying to keep up with it. I tell you, it's something else. It's a whole new age. But I want to make sure that what I want to do is I want to make sure that people go out and get your books because it's an awesome series, and you have to get it. And of course, how many more books is coming in the series?
At least one more, probably two. The next one's going to be called, Book 4 is going to be called New Horizons, and I'm working on that right now. How many more there will be after that, I'm not entirely sure. It depends on what the characters and the circumstances tell me. I initially wanted to keep this at like a trilogy with 3 books, but the characters and the story wouldn't let me.
I'm talking.
I'm being led by the nose a little bit by my stories, and so I can tell you for certain there's one more, probably one after that. Beyond that, I can't speculate.
Okay. Well, Michael, thank you so much for being the guest on our show today. And we encourage our listeners to support our authors by purchasing their books and enjoying the journey it will take you on. And so you have several books to get from Michael, and start with the first book, which is called let me get my books. I had all this ready to go. The first book, which is called Future Discovered. And these are science fiction books, and I'm telling you, you're going to be good. You get to know Van Child and the other characters that will be coming along in the book as you read it. And then you have the Immortal Guardian, and then you get to find out if Van stays alive or whether he becomes immortal or not. And then you have the third book in the trilogy, and it is called is it The Setup? No, The Search for Help. I'm thinking about something else. The Search for Help. I'm on another author. On The Search for Help. And then, of course, if you or your company or your church or your organization needs good leadership coaching, he has a book called Leaders Are Made, Not Born. And then he has a company that will come and coach you in leadership and have you all getting your leaders in order and ready to lead the company. So we're so thankful to have you on the show today, Michael.
Thank you for listening to Dear Texas Radio, where we encourage everyone to drop everything and read a great book by a Texas author. More information about this show or any of our shows from the past years can be found at radio.deartexas.info. That's radio.deartexas.info. I'm Randy James, your announcer for Dear Texas Radio.